Buenos días a todos y a todas. Declaro abierta la tercera sesión plenaria de la cuarta conferencia internacional.
Good morning. I call to order the plenary meeting of the fourth International Conference for Finance for Development. Distinguished heads of government, ministers, ladies and gentlemen, the conference will continue with the general debate on item 8 of the program. In line with the organization of the work of the conference, the interventions in the general debate cannot exceed 5 minutes. I would encourage those who intend to make longer statements to make a shorter version and to send the long form so that it can be published on the website. To help speakers manage their time, there'll be a timer. I would urge you to stick to your time limit so that everyone will have time to speak. When the 5-minute time limit ends, the microphones will switch off after a brief courtesy period. I have the honor of giving the floor to Mr. Javier Espot Zamora, head of the government of the Principality of Andorra, to take the floor.
Tengo el honor.
It is my honor to invite Mr. Mohamed Jude Jolo.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I warmly express Sierra Leone's deep appreciation first to His Excellency Pedro Sanchez, President of the Government of Spain, and the people of Spain for hosting this important conference and for the warm hospitality extended to our delegation in the beautiful city of Seville. We equally commend Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, for his steadfast leadership and bold call for a fairer, more inclusive, and more resilient global financial architecture. Excellencies, we gather at a moment of unprecedented global challenges, nearly a decade after the adoption of the 2030 Agenda. Progress on the Sustainable Development Goals is alarmingly off track. The financing gap for development, now estimated at about 4 trillion annually, is widening, particularly for developing countries. Without urgent and transformative action, we risk leaving behind the most vulnerable. In Sierra Leone, the gap between our development aspirations and available resources remains significant. Our National Development Plan is anchored on 5 transformative priorities, our big 5 game changers, which includes boosting agriculture productivity, expanding energy access, and promoting human capital development. The cost of implementing this plan exceeds $12 billion, with a financing gap of over $2 billion, despite our strong domestic effort to mobilize resources. We are investing in education, healthcare, energy, and infrastructure, but high debt servicing costs continue to constrain our physical space, limiting our ability to recruit additional teachers, deploy doctors, grow crops, and more importantly, power rural clinics. We reiterate our call for a development-oriented debt architecture that reduces the cost of capital, expand physical space, and support long-term investment in human capital, infrastructure, and climate resilience. Sierra Leone therefore aligns with the Pact for the Future and the Compromiso de Seville in emphasizing global financial governance that must be reformed to be more inclusive, equitable, and representative. African countries remain underrepresented in international financial institutions. The global financial system must no longer talk about Africa without Africa. Our voices must shape the rules that govern the system. Inclusion is not just fear, it is essential for legitimacy and, more importantly, for delivering on our shared development goals. Excellencies, we recognize that financing for development must go beyond debt and fiscal measures. We also urge the following: the fulfillment of ODA commitment by developing partners, including the long-standing target of 0.7% of GNI to help countries like Sierra Leone address poverty, food insecurity, and human development gaps. Second, enhance climate financing. We also call for combating illicit financial flows and advocating fair international tax system, investment in gender, and support to local valuation and trade integration, including beneficiation. His Excellency, distinguished guests, Sierra Leone welcomes the Compromiso de Sevilla as a bold step towards realigning our global financial system with the priorities of developing countries. But we must leave Sevilla not only with hopeful words, but with concrete, time-bound commitment that deliver impact where it matters. Let us act now to ensure that the promise of the 2030 agenda becomes a reality for all and leaving no one behind. I thank you very much.
Doy las gracias.
I want to thank Mr. Mohamed Julay Jalou, Vice President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, and I now have the honor of inviting Your Excellency Javier Espot Zamora, Head of Government of the Principality of Andorra. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I want to thank my most sincere gratitude to the government of the Kingdom of Spain and the United Nations for organizing this 4th International Conference for Financing for Development. Our presence here today in Seville testifies to the importance that we attach to multilateralism to build a future that is more equitable, sustainable, and integrative. We are at a crucial turning point. The 2030 agenda is our common framework. However, its implementation requires a renewed and wholehearted commitment by the member states of the United Nations. The fact that we have made progress in implementation to the tune of only 17% in implementing the SDGs, while various forms of inequality continue to be present around the world, is a wake-up call that we must not ignore. With this in mind, the Ibero-American states reached a consensus on a declaration presented in the framework of the preparatory work of this conference. In this common message, we demonstrate that multilateral cooperation can be effective, and that in spite of our differences and our various levels of development, we share the same priorities. As I mentioned, at the Summit for the Future last September, it is our responsibility to address with greater determination the global challenges that threaten the well-being of future generations. Climate change continues, without a doubt, to be one of the most urgent crises of our time, and one of the most worrisome global challenges of our time. Andorra is at the heart of the Pyrenees Mountains. This is why we have made the sustainability of the mountains one of our main priorities. Indeed, states that are located in the mountains are exposed to environmental upheavals such as melting of glaciers, pressure on natural resources, and threats to biodiversity. This situation merely strengthens the need for collective responses. Ladies and gentlemen, for Andorra, international cooperation is more than simply a choice. It is a necessity. We deeply believe that global challenges will only find a response through collective and coordinated action. On this point, the priorities of my government in the area of development and aid are fighting against climate change, education, especially education of girls, gender equality, fighting against discrimination, and a focus on the most vulnerable populations, in particular children and persons with disabilities. I would like today to reaffirm the attachment of Andorra to its commitments in the area of public development aid. While certain budgetary choices have led to a reduction of this aid, we have opted for continuity. We are convinced that international solidarity remains essential, and we will continue to act within our possibilities for the benefit of implementing the SDGs. Guided by this spirit, we believe that it is essential to work together in order to reform the international financial architecture. We fully support the efforts aimed at making global financial institutions more inclusive, more effective, and in particular, through an in-depth reflection on their governance. The voices of all states, whether they're small or large, developed or developing, must be heard and taken into account. Equality and inclusion are prerequisites to any credible reform of our global financial system. It is therefore essential that we advance together towards a representative financial governance capable of incorporating the varied realities, the diverse realities of all countries. Ladies and gentlemen, I would also like, on behalf of Andorra, to reaffirm our commitment in favor of climate financing. In the face of the now clearly tangible consequences of climate change, it is urgent to bolster mechanisms of international solidarity. At our level, we have established certain tools which demonstrate that all states, independent of their size, can contribute to global climate goals. However, we know that these efforts must be expanded to the international level. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, much remains to be done. However, our determination is firm. Today, Andorra reaffirms wholeheartedly its commitment to multilateralism that is strong, inclusive, and to a more just global financial governance and international solidarity that will finally bear fruit together through dialogue, cooperation, and coordination. We will build a future that is commensurate to the expectations of our citizens and future generations. Thank you very much for your attention.
Doy las gracias al jefe de gobierno del
I want to thank the head of government of the Principality of Andorra. Now I have the honor of inviting His Excellency Amadou Oudiba, Prime Minister, head of government of the Republic of Guinea, to take the floor.
Excellence,
Your Excellency, Pedro Sanchez, President of the Conference, Your Excellency, Secretary General of the United Nations, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, heads of state and government. We welcome the fact that Seville, in the heart of Spain and symbol of Euro-African relations as well as cultural cross-pollination, was chosen as the venue for this fourth United Nations Conference on Financing for Development. On behalf of His Excellency, Army General Mamadi Doumbouya, President of the Republic of Guinea, I would like to welcome the convening of this important conference, convened in the spirit of responsibility that is collective at a time of deep-seated tensions, overlapping emergencies, and weakened promises. At a time when the global development financing deficit is dangerously rising, we must redefine international solidarity. Redefine it not as an abstract moral principle, but as a pragmatic precondition for our common survival. The world will only be able to face up to systemic risks that are piling up, whether that be climate-related debt, armed conflict, food security, or the digital divide. The world will only be able to do this through a thorough renewal of the foundations of multilateralism, in particular financial multilateralism. Ladies and gentlemen, our region is the living symbol of what could come to pass if we fail to show solidarity. In fact, the crisis in the Sahel demonstrate the worldwide risks and the harmful consequences of climate change. The Republic of Guinea is undergoing transformation. Our country is rich in natural resources, but vulnerable to climatic, economic, and geopolitical shocks. We bring a unique and legitimate voice to this debate. We are facing a complex equation. We must respond to pressing social needs, all the while undergoing an economic transition that is compatible with global goals, in particular climate and economic goals. For this reason, we are calling for differentiated financing instruments, which factor in the specific reality of countries like ours. Development assistance that does not factor in green investment efforts or the climate vulnerabilities we are facing and the concomitant constraints, such development assistance can be neither fair nor inclusive, and least of all, effective. The Republic of Guinea has initiated an economic transformation, drawing on our national levers, but also opening up to financial innovation, to strategic partnerships, and to bold public governance reforms. The Samandu program, which sets out our diversification strategy and our productive sovereignty strategy, symbolizes this new ambition. It's not simply about building a more robust economy. It's about creating an endogenous and sustainable model which can create jobs as well as value chains and guarantee access to essential services. As part and parcel of this transformation, the Republic of Guinea is continuing its efforts to preserve its national heritage as we face serious challenges, whether they be environmental or otherwise. We have sites that have been added to the UNESCO World Heritage List. We are working on cross-border cooperation and sustainable development. This attests to our desire to strengthen regional solidarity, especially for landlocked countries. We are staying true to our history and working hand in hand with our neighbors. We'd like to assure you that we are committed to integration, the integration of our territory, our resources inter alia for the common good. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in Seville, we need to move beyond statements of intent. We are calling for an effective reform of the international financial architecture. We're calling for an equitable debt management mechanism and for global tax cooperation that no longer marginalizes the countries of the South. We're also calling for an approach to climate and development financing that is truly partnership-based. The establishment of new financing windows, rewarding national efforts, as well as access to concessional resources on the basis of criteria tailored to contemporary reality. All of the above must be prioritized. The Republic of Guinea is not asking for special treatment. What we'd like to see is equitable recognition of our efforts and recognition of the rights of all peoples to chart their own course towards prosperity. Let the Seville commitment not just be one more document. We want it to be a concrete turning point in the decisions we take together to finance the future we claim to want to forge. I thank you.
Doy las gracias al primer ministro.
I thank Prime Minister of Head of Government of the Republic of Guinea. I now have the honor of inviting Her Excellency Sara Zafrani Zenzi, Head of Government of the Republic of Tunisia, to take the floor.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السيدة الرئيسة، أصحاب السمو.
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, President, heads of state and government, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me to deliver this statement on behalf of His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Tunisia. I'd like to seize this opportunity to extend our gratitude to the Kingdom of Spain for their very kind invitation, for their warm hospitality in the city of Seville, a city whose history spans many civilizations. I would also like to thank the United Nations and to commend the efforts undertaken to hold this conference, which is being convened during a very trying period for the international system, especially as regards socioeconomic development, technological development, and the environment. This conference also comes as we prepare for celebrations of the United Nations 80th anniversary on the 24th of October 1945. The United Nations was founded in San Francisco. It was founded on the basis of principles which live on to this day and which should be put into practice. I'm referring to the principles of collective security. However, we cannot discuss this principle without mentioning the Palestinian cause, which remains an open wound. We can only talk about justice or sustainable development being an objective which remains out of reach. We cannot discuss this unless the rights of Palestinian people, and especially the establishment of a Palestinian state with Jerusalem as its capital, as long as this state has not been born, and this in keeping with the international legal norms. Peace and development are inextricably linked. We can only achieve these if there is justice. And how can this happen when an entire people is being deprived of decent living conditions, of life, including the right to exist? Ladies and gentlemen, over the last few years, we've seen that the international community is not up to task. It is not capable of confronting the economic and social challenges we face, on top of which come the challenges of the pandemic, climate-related challenges, all of which has weakened the ties that bind states. It has also undermined our achievement of the SDGs, an objective set by the United Nations. During the Addis Ababa conference in 2015, we adopted a bold program of action seeking to achieve sustainable development. Nonetheless, the pandemic and successive waves of tensions, as well as geopolitical tensions, not to mention climate challenges, all of the above have meant that states have not been capable of tackling the challenges they face. This has further grown the gap between states. Tunisia is a proud member of both the Arab world and the African continent. We have served as a bridge, a point of contact between different civilizations. However, our efforts hinge on our capacity to achieve justice. Our national strategy is underpinned by an approach that is based on two pillars. First, building a robust economy and locking in the foundations of a just state. We are endeavoring to build a more resilient order so as to achieve sustainable development, which would allow for economic recovery, paving the way for investment. Moreover, Tunisia is seeking to consolidate its role by creating decent job opportunities for all of our people across all categories, all the while providing particular assistance to the most vulnerable groups. Financing for development is a major challenge, and this requires deep and bold reforms. In Tunisia, we do lack resources. We are seeing our debt burden increase. in part owing to international markets volatility. There are many constraints being placed on our budgets, on our public finances, although education, health, infrastructure, we are undertaking reforms in all these sectors. And all of this is prompting us to ask a very important question. How do we achieve the SDGs at a time when resources are increasingly limited and at a time when we are tackling numerous challenges, pandemics and wars? Mr. President, the President of the Republic of Tunisia during his participation in the summit focusing on financing for African economies, called for greater effectiveness of international efforts so as to be able to address the challenges we face and to lessen the debt burden, in addition to achieving restructuring. Financing for development compels us to also address the issue of stolen assets. This is the sovereign right of our people. This is the way we view the issue. Nonetheless, all of our efforts have been unsuccessful owing to the circumstances. This is why we are calling for asset recovery today. These are not just figures. This is a way of guaranteeing the future for generations to come. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome the role played by our partners, both bilateral and multilateral. We call for us to reconsider international cooperation mechanisms. These mechanisms should be underpinned by the principles of sovereignty and the need to take into account country-specific factors. We also emphasize the need to craft our national strategies by drawing on our national resources, our vision, while remaining open to proposals tabled by partners as part of comprehensive cooperation. Speaking from this high rostrum, we call for an overhaul of international financial mechanisms to make them better tailored to the needs of developing countries, as well as to satisfy the needs of these countries in keeping with the following objectives. We need long-term mechanisms which target key sectors, for instance, energy, the energy transition, health, education, the list goes on. When referring to financing for development, which is something we all aspire to, when discussing this, we need to factor in the aspirations of states and their national priorities. International financial institutions, IFIs, should adopt policies based on genuine partnerships with developing countries. Tunisia believes that fair financing to be a sine qua non prerequisite, and we're calling for new policies to be devised based on the following pillars: greater funding for international funds, adequate financing, a review of debt conditions. The speaker has not provided a text. Furthermore, with a view to reducing the consequences of climate change, we must ensure we continue to strike a balance on the African continent so as to allow Africa to secure the financing necessary for implementing its various projects. During the 2023 summit, which was held in Paris, France, an appeal was launched, the objective being to create a genuine partnership which would serve the interests of all of humanity. Furthermore, the President of the Republic of Tunisia reaffirmed that some agreements have become outdated and can no longer be implemented. Against this backdrop, Tunisia has issued and Nepal did this on the sidelines of the last General Assembly, and we called for a new approach to the international financial system to ensure it's restructured so that it is better fit for purpose, tailored to the needs of developing countries, so as to achieve various objectives. We need to ensure access to concessional financing is broadened. We need to combat illicit capital flows, as well as to combat corruption. Tunisia is decisively marching down the path towards development and growth. We're doing this in partnership with regional and international partners, and with a view to meeting the needs of our people. The current global situation compels us to bolster multilateralism so as to be able to implement the courageous, the bold decisions that can pave the way to stability on our planet. By way of conclusion, we'd like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to the Kingdom of Spain for its stellar hospitality and for hosting this very important conference. Furthermore, we must ensure that there is follow-up to the outcomes of the conference so as to be able to live up to the aspirations of our people, thereby forging a world where peace, stability, and security reign. I thank you.
Doy las gracias a la jefa de gobierno.
I thank the head of government of the Republic of Tunisia, and I give the floor to His Excellency Hussein Mohammed Latif, Vice President of the Republic of Maldives. You have the floor.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Prime Minister of Spain and President of the Conference, His Excellency Mr. Pedro Sanchez, Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, Assalamu alaikum. Firstly, I thank the government and the people of Spain for hosting this important conference and for their warm hospitality in this beautiful city of Seville. Every country aims to improve lives and secure a better future for its people. Sustainable development is central to the ambition. But for developing countries, structural barriers in the global financial system make progress more challenging. That's why development must be purposeful, driven by vision, strategy, and sustained investment despite global challenges. Under the leadership of President Dr. Mohamed Moise, the Maldives is making that choice. We are taking bold steps to become a developed country by 2040. Yet this is being tested by a global environment marked by geopolitical tensions and division. Conflicts are affecting supply chains, increasing uncertainty and increasing risks. These global challenges highlighted the need to build resilience from within. As such, the Maldives is investing in expanding the economy to strengthen its foundation for long-term growth. Last year, we began offering international bunkering services, and we are also expanding trade partnership to boost value-added fisheries exports. These support the balance of trade and increases foreign currency reserves. We are building a modern financial system through the Maldives International Financial Services Authority and developing the Maldives International Finance Center as a financial free zone which has already secured up to $8 billion in investment commitments. To support these new reforms, the Development Bank of Maldives was created to finance long-term social and economic development with domestic resource mobilization as a key strategy. To Maldives values the potential of its young population and is investing in inclusive climate-positive enterprise development. We are promoting micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises with a focus on empowerment women and youth, supported by a creative economy strategy that support local talent and strengthen community-driven growth. We are upgrading our infrastructure to support key sectors like tourism. This July, the new terminal at Velana International Airport will open, tripling capacity to 7 million passengers every year. Tripling capacity to 7 million passengers every year and unlocking new economic opportunities. Together, these efforts expand the Maldives development space and boost resilience among global uncertainty. However, ambition alone is not enough. The international financing system is uneven, outdated, and does not reflect our realities. For many developing countries, especially SIDS, the unsustainable debt is the greatest barrier to progress. We are ineligible for concessional finance to recover from external shocks. We are therefore forced to rely on commercial borrowing for the basic needs of development. The Maldives advocates a debt relief for resilience building mechanism, urging creditors to link relief to a country's investment in building resilience. This provides SIDS the fiscal space to invest in their development without creating new debt. The Seville commitment must turn words into action, giving countries the space and tools to achieve sustainable development. Achieving this vision requires courage, cooperation, and reform of a system that too often leaves the most vulnerable behind. The Maldives sees a clear path forward. We must invest in national capacity, reform the global financial architecture, enable meaningful debt relief, and act with urgency and purpose. Above all, we must think big. That is the only way to realize the promise of the 2030 agenda for all countries on their terms. I thank you.
Doy las gracias al
I thank the Vice President of the Republic of Maldives, and it's my honor to invite His Excellency Mohamed Enyadir Laraboui, Prime Minister of the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria, to take the floor.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم عليه نتوكل وبه نستعين.
In the name of God, most compassionate, most merciful. Madam Chair, Your Excellencies, it is my pleasure to convey to you the greetings, to convey to you and to His Majesty the King Felipe VI, the greetings of our President Abdelmajid Tebboune and our deep appreciation for the Kingdom of Spain for hosting this very important conference. And it is my pleasure to deliver his statement.
بسم الله الرحمن.
In the name of God, most compassionate, most merciful, may Your Excellency Pedro Sanchez, Prime Minister of Spain, Your Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, Your Excellency Philemon Young, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. This conference on financing for development is taking place amidst deepening development gap and increasing debt burdens, as well as the impacts of climate change and the increasing number of wars and conflicts, including what is happening in the Middle East, namely in occupied Palestine and wounded Gaza, which is facing a war of genocide targeting the Palestinian people, the brotherly Palestinian people, that is fighting for its legitimate rights to have its own independent state, having East Jerusalem as its capital. Amid these complex and concerning socio-economic conditions. We look forward to this conference so that it becomes a turning point of a new era of collecting action by drafting practical outcomes to re-examine the international financial architecture, which is not capable anymore to accompany the deep transformation that our world is witnessing, nor can it anymore meet the requirements of sustainable development. This legitimate ambition is justified by the injustice faced by the African continent that is still facing difficult challenges amid reduced resources to finance development, increasing debt burdens, which is hampering the efficiency of its development efforts, which limits also its capacity to achieve common prosperity. The increasing debts of Africa is one of the main obstacles that is preventing our countries from achieving development, which requires urgent initiatives to find a solution to this problem, namely by alleviating the debt burdens until write-off of debts. We believe that the multilateral system requires more reinforcement of the principles of justice and equality through a comprehensive reform of the international financial architecture and enabling the developing countries to take part in the governance of international financial institutions. In this context, we support the project to establish an international frame of work to bridge the gaps when it comes to debts and to have practical solutions and urgent solutions regarding the credit classification of our countries. We need more transparent and more just methods for credit rating. We are welcoming the establishment of an African agency for credit rating. Ladies and gentlemen, imposing standards on the countries that benefit from funding should be a priority. We call for more flexible policies, more realistic policies when channeling the international assistance based on partnership and mutual understanding rather than imposing preconditions on these countries. In the same context, I would like to reiterate once again the importance of promoting international cooperation for the sake of development, especially through reactivating the role of relevant international frameworks, given that there are international mechanisms to support development. I should not be remiss to mention that private funding could not compensate for public development funding. That's why relying exclusively on the private sector to fund development should not be sufficient unless it is accompanied by an international strong commitment to support the capacities of these least developed countries and poor countries. In this context, we commend the allocation of 0.7% of the GDP as official development assistance to developing countries. Ladies and gentlemen, my country, Algeria, placed sustainable development and international cooperation in the heart of our foreign policy. That's why we have been constantly supporting development efforts in the African continent. We have also been part of the regional continental integration by implementing many projects. We are also working through the Algerian Agency for International Cooperation, working on supporting infrastructure in the field of education, health, and energy in many African countries. And we have allocated about $1 billion for this project. Our country has also adopted a financial policy based on relying on our own resources, and we have been able to free ourselves from the debt burden. That's why we can now assist countries that are still facing the debt burden. Finally, I would like to reiterate once again the necessity to find solutions that could finance development, and I hope that our conference will be a launching platform to a comprehensive development process that reflects our deep conviction that common prosperity cannot be achieved unless we limit the gaps between the countries and unless we find an international environment that will provide solutions to all the current and contemporary crises and challenges. May God's peace and blessings be upon you all.
Doy las gracias al primer ministro.
I thank the Prime Minister of the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria and have the honor of inviting His Excellency, His Royal Highness Prince Faisal bin Al Hussein, Prince of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, to speak.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Madam President, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we gather here today as our world continues to face enormous challenges. With only 5 years left to the Sustainable Development Goal deadline. Much has happened since we set out at that deadline. Great progress, but also, unfortunately, many setbacks. With less than a fifth of the SDGs on track and a $4 trillion financing gap. So we appreciate the efforts of the government of Spain and the United Nations in bringing us together here to engage in a frank dialogue on how we can overcome these challenges and secure a more sustainable future for all. Global and regional unrest, the aftermath of the COVID pandemic, the refugee crisis have reversed years of progress in poverty reduction, worsening the burden on developing nations. At the same time, official development assistance has not kept pace with these evolving challenges, leaving a significant resource shortfall. Financing has declined, while rising interest rates and borrowing costs have increased the financial burdens on developing countries. Nations like Jordan have been affected by all of this firsthand. As host of over 3.8 million refugees, including 1.3 million Syrians, our education, healthcare, and infrastructure have been severely impacted. Already scarce water resources have been dwindling amid added pressure of climate change. Nevertheless, Jordan, as always, is working to turn challenges into opportunities. We are pressing ahead in our pursuit of the SDGs, with our progress in implementation standing at 63%. And we are steadfastly moving forward in our SDG-inspired economic modernization vision, implementing national strategies that prioritizes inclusive growth, social protection, and serving citizens. And we look to robust financial resources and innovative solutions to fuel our progress in vital sectors as we transition to renewable energy, modernize our transportation infrastructure, and enhance digital connectivity. Our vital national desalination conveyance project is aimed at resolving our water scarcity challenge. It is an example of how important it is for the right innovative financing ingredients, grants, debt swaps, blended and concessional financing, as well as the private sector engagement, can come together and pave the way to prosperity. We also remain committed to our bold emission reduction targets in line with the Paris Agreement, with clear plans for mitigation and adaptation.
you.